everyone, welcome back to my channel. So as you can maybe tell, I'm in a little bit of a different setting. I moved a little bit to the left. I thought that maybe it would help to have something in the background to break up the white a little bit, so here we are. I don't have a table in front of me or anything, which is a little annoying. I don't know, I might go back to the other setting depending on the video. Anyway, today is a little bit of a heavy topic. We're going to be talking about grief. First, I just wanted to talk about what grief means. According to Google, the definition is deep sorrow, especially that caused by someone's death. Now, I want to emphasize that grief is not just related to death. People can grieve, a relationship that ended, a school that they didn't get into, moving and missing a part of their life that they once had. So grief can take place in multiple different ways. So you've probably once heard of the 5 stages of grief, which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. A lot of times when we think of things in stages, we think that it kind of goes in a numerical order, but the stages of grief can happen in any order. So someone can start with depression, someone can start with anger. It doesn't necessarily have to start with denial. And then also it's important to know that someone can go back stages. So someone might be even at the acceptance stage and then they might go back to denial. It can happen in any order. So a little bit about me and what happened to me this year. I've lost a lot of loved ones in the past year. It all started on May 10th of last year, and which is when we had to put my dog down. And for those of you who aren't dog people, you might not fully understand, but for me, my dog was like a sibling to me. It wasn't just a pet, it was a very traumatizing experience. I didn't know that she was as sick as she was. And then my parents told me one day when I just called to check on her, and they said, I think we're gonna have to put her down next week. So I immediately went home. I spent a few days with her. I literally slept on an air mattress right next to her bed because I wanted her to be in her own space so that she was super comfortable. And then on May 10th, we had to put her down. We got my first dog when I was 6. And 6 years later, she actually got hit by a car and died, which was obviously awful. But when you put a dog down, it's a little bit different. For me, it felt like it was my choice in a way. It felt like I was somewhat responsible for what was happening. So in some ways, that was harder for me. But I mean, it was just different. I had also always pictured when you put a dog down, it was like the dog was so old and they were, could barely move, and you were going to carry them up on the table because they were just so in so much pain. And this was not my dog at all. I mean, she was 10, so she was older, and she was very sick. She had a lot of stomach problems, so she was constantly throwing up. And that last week, it was just all day, all the time, so it was not a good situation for her. But other than that, she was puppy-like, she was very still herself, and walked into the vet and she was all excited when they gave her a treat, and so there was nothing that really it didn't feel real. It didn't feel like this is the end. The actual process of putting her down was also just terrible. The vet was not super sympathetic at all. He was just very straight to the point. And I don't think that helped. And she had a lot of anxiety. She was shaking, and she just knew, because we were all crying, and she just knew that something wasn't right. So that whole experience in general was not as peaceful as people had told me that it would be. I've heard that isn't the norm. I've heard that typically it is a peaceful experience for the dog and the family, but that just wasn't what happened for us. I think that also was it contributed to my reaction. This was one of the hardest things I think that I've ever gone through emotionally. After we put her down and we went back to my house, I didn't speak. I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't eat. I didn't even drink anything for like 36 hours because I was just so upset. It was like I didn't believe it. Eventually I did talk about it with my dad. Him and I kind of grieve in similar ways, so it was the easiest for me to talk to him and open up to him. About a month later, my grandfather died. In October of that same year, so 2021, my other grandfather passed away. And then in this year, a few months ago in February, my grandmother passed away fairly unexpectedly. I'm very close to all of my grandparents. Although that's a really big blessing because I know that not everyone gets to even meet their grandparents or know them on that level. It also just makes it a lot more difficult to lose them because they were such a big part of my life. So it was just a lot all in the period of a single year. It's just so much to go through, especially because at the time I was graduating college, I was starting grad school, but I am definitely in a lot better place than I was a year ago. I want to talk a little bit about how you can help others who are dealing with grief and help yourself as well. So a few don'ts. These are things that you should never do. Don't say, I know how you feel. I know that this can sometimes be comforting. You have to understand that even if you and your sibling both lost your father, you guys still had a different bond with him. You guys are still different people, and the way that you go through that and the way that you grieve are going to be different. So at the end of the day, you don't know how they feel. Another one, which might just be self-explanatory, is to say, get over it. And I know that sounds really harsh, and you might not hear it in that context exactly, but you might hear it in the sense of like, oh, it's time to move on, or you need to get through it. While those all may be true, that is not what someone wants to hear, and that's definitely not what they need to hear. Which leads into the third one. Don't push people. This can come in multiple different ways. I know that for me, I had people reach out to me over and over and over again and wanting to talk to me and wanting to call because they cared about me, right? They wanted to see if I was okay. And although I appreciate that, I didn't want to talk about it. And that to me made me more frustrated and more upset because no one could understand that I just needed space. There's no right way to grieve, and someone may think that like by you taking time and not speaking about it, that's unhealthy or that's wrong, and that's why they want to reach out and get you to talk about it. But everyone goes through things and does things in their own way, and you need to respect that and allow people that time to heal. Now moving on to some things that you should do. So it's okay to reach out. I know I just kind of went on a little tangent about how I didn't like how much people were reaching out to me, but there's a balance, okay? There's a difference between, reaching out once or twice versus like the person doesn't respond and you're consistently, trying to contact them. Reach out and just say, I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm here for you. Let me know if you want to talk. That's all you need. The next one may sound a little bit repetitive, but be okay with how other people grieve. As I mentioned, there is not necessarily a right or wrong way of grieving. Obviously, there's ways that can be more healthy than others, but be okay with that person's process and what they need to do to get through things. I know for me, after my dog passed away, I watched like Marley and Me and A Dog's Purpose, like all the very depressing dog movies, and I just cried and cried and cried. My boyfriend was like, why are you watching these? This seems like a terrible idea. And maybe it was, but for me, it I don't know, it just helps. It's like therapeutic to go through that. Although maybe at the time I wasn't feeling great, like I do think that it made me feel better at the end to kind of go through that and process it in the way that I needed to. And a lot of people thought that this was really weird and really unhealthy, and definitely got some comments about why would I do that. I'm happy that I did, and I'm happy that I trusted myself and understood what I needed. So the last thing that you should do is make sure that you're following through with whatever it is that you're saying you're going to do. So if you're reaching out to the person and saying, I'm so sorry, I'm here to talk if you need to talk, make sure that you actually mean that. Because if that person reaches out and you're like, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm busy, you might be the one person they finally chose to reach out to, and then you're turning them down. They might not want to talk to anyone else. Now, this isn't to say you have to drop everything in your life to speak to this person. Let's say you're at work, give an alternative. Say, I'm so sorry, I'm working right now, but I would love to speak with you. But whatever you're doing, just make sure that you're actually following through with it. I feel like I've learned a lot this year about grief and about kind of that process. And I know that there's a lot of things that I wish people had given to me. One of the first things is just acknowledgement. A lot of people would reach out and say, oh, I'm so sorry, your grandfather passed away or whatever. But I think that because there was so much going on at the time, I wish that someone had just acknowledged how hard that was. And there was people who did. I shouldn't say no one did that, but I wish that I had more friends or family members that reached out and had been this is a tough year, and how are you dealing with this process? Not just how are you dealing with the loss of this person, but how are you dealing with everything in your life? Another thing would be understanding. I wish that people understood what I needed to do in order to get through it. Another thing is I wish people would have asked me the simplest of questions, which is, how can I help you? And I know this sounds very basic, and the person might answer with, I don't know. And that's okay. They may just want someone to listen to them. Maybe they want to try therapy and they don't really know how to start that process. And obviously in that moment, you're very stressed out, and maybe your job is just helping them find those resources. A lot of people, after someone passes away, they have to deal with a lot of financial stress, and offering help in that realm if you can. Just really being there for that person and asking that question, even if they don't know what they need, it shows that you're willing to help with whatever it is now or in the future that they may need you to do. A few things to do if you are the one who is grieving. I would highly recommend trying therapy. I know that that's easier said than done sometimes, and not everyone likes to open up to people or talk about what they're going through, but I think that it can be very beneficial, even if you don't directly talk about whatever loss you're dealing with, just to have a little bit of time for yourself. There are a lot of online platforms that offer therapy services where you don't even have to leave your home, so it's really convenient. A lot of people will say surround yourself with things that make you feel happy. I'm gonna say surround yourself with things that make you feel better. And what I mean by this is there's not always going to be things that in that moment are going to make you feel happy. But I know for me, sometimes if I'm really upset and I watch a happy movie or listen to happy music, it just makes me more upset that I'm not at that place, that I'm not happy. And so for me, it actually sometimes helps to watch things that are maybe sad. It sounds a little depressing, I know, but it just makes me feel like it's okay, it's okay to feel this way. It just validates, I guess, my feelings a little bit better, which makes me feel better. So just ensure that you're doing whatever works for you. Talk to your family and friends, even if you don't want to talk to them about what's going on or what's happening with you, at least let them know that you're okay. And most importantly, I would just say give yourself grace. This is a very hard time that you're going through, and I think that you need to just learn to trust yourself and trust your intuition. Take the resources that are offered to you if you feel like that's going to improve your emotional state. Really just make sure that you're taking time for yourself. So I hope that you learned something from this video or gained a little bit of insight on how to help yourself or help others. I know that this was definitely more of a heavy topic, but I think that it's not necessarily something that people talk about all the time, and I think that those are the things that are probably the most important to talk about. So if you think this video was helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and you can share it with others if you think that it would benefit them as well. And if you want to see future videos, please hit the subscribe button below. Thank you so much for watching, and take care of yourself.